Hey, this is Bailey.
And I'm Timothy.
And welcome to What Sleep Podcast.
Let's get right into it.
Woo. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Today, we are going to talk about... Why are you laughing?
It says a hello into the cup and it echoed. And I'm like, oh, wait, I was talking on this. Anyways.
Anyway. I've got a fun little mystery for our case today.
I love this case.
So this is the story of the Brodus family. The father, Derek, grew up in Maine and went into the insurance career field, and he worked really, really hard to move his way up the company, up in the company, and he eventually actually became the senior vice president.
My dude.
So, he did the thing.
Impressive.
With this new promotion, obviously came a pay raise, which would afford the family a nice home to live in.
Must be nice.
Their dream home. For Maria, his wife, this was a dream come true because the family had found a home for sale in Maria's old neighborhood. And this home was actually just blocks away from her childhood home. So
her family's had money.
Before, it might have been in the family for a while, their home. A lot of these homes were actually built way in the 50s. So, and at this point, this was 2014. So
Quality built.
Yeah.
If they're still standing.
In July of 2014, the family secured a home I'm going to call it the home because this is the subject of our case today. 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. Derek wanted to give his family and children a life that he didn't necessarily have when he grew up.
Good dude.
And he seemed to have found the perfect place for that dream to be realized. The house had a huge backyard for the kids and potentially a dog if that's what they wanted. The school nearby was reputable, and the commute to work in nearby Manhattan, New York, wasn't too much for him to handle. So this kind of seemed like the perfect thing for the family.
Hey, not bad. I assume he probably went on the subway or took a train or something.
Maybe. I'm not sure how he commuted. He might have driven. Actually, I don't actually know how far Westfield, New Jersey.
42 minutes driving.
So
via I-95.
Yeah. So obviously, the kids themselves were caught up pretty quick in the new house glow. You know what I mean? Picking out rooms, figuring out how they were going to decorate.
Honestly, there's nothing better than moving into a new space.
Yeah, because it's I know this is going to sound like whatever cliche or whatever, but it's like a brand new canvas. When you're a kid, absolutely throw some pink on that wall. Do whatever you want.
Even as an adult, I'm like, ooh, new things.
It's just the potential, I think, that it still gets me excited, but as a kid, you're just I'm going to put a roller coaster in here. I'm going to find a way to put a roller coaster in my room, Anything is possible.
This is where I'm going to make all my candy money.
Candy money?
Keep your candy from Halloween and then sell it later on to kids in school?
I wasn't that smart.
Oh.
I just ate the candy.
I guess that was just me. I would just eat the... So apparently I'm in the minority here, but I love candy corn.
I like candy corn too. It's good.
I see her. Everyone's like, you like candy corn?
I think we talked about this in our listeners episode with Lisa.
Oh, we might have.
Yeah, and
how I also love Peeps.
Okay, so that's a difference with me. It's I like marshmallows, but I don't like candied marshmallows, whether it's candied or chocolate. I think it's gross. It's just got to be marshmallows, and if it's gonna be chocolate, make it a s'more. Nothing against you. I just personally don't like marshmallow.
I prefer the
candies.
Pink Peeps. The yellow Peeps really have no flavor to me.
I don't know what any of them taste like because I've never had one.
You've never had a Peep?
No, I don't like marshmallow candy.
It's not really a candy. It's just a marshmallow that's just
candied
covered in sugar.
It's candied marshmallow.
It's not candy.
So just a little bit about this house. It's flipping huge. This is a big house. It was bought by the family for $1.3 million. It has 6 bedrooms, multiple fireplaces. Like, I think they had a fireplace in the dining room along with, like, the main living area. And it had, like, this big grand entrance. And I have a picture of the house.
I wish I could casually just be like, yeah, I'll take this house for $1.3 million.
He worked really hard and worked his way up in the company. Here's the house itself. So, like...
That does not look worth $1.3 million.
It's a huge house.
I mean, yeah, it looks big, but...
And I think it has a wraparound porch, too, kind of, like, in the backyard. It kind of, like, wraps around the side.
Like, if you look at that and then compare it to Texas for, like, the same value, you'll get such better house.
And it was in a nice neighborhood, you know, that sort of thing. I think the neighborhood actually had, like... So this neighborhood was a really kind of socialite-ish kind of neighborhood. So they would constantly be holding, you know, barbecues, or a lot of the neighborhood would get together and just, like, hang out, which I guess social people do or whatever, but that sounds not for me.
Like, you know, if that's your thing, you know, that's cool.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like it was just boring for me.
It's not your vibe.
It's not my vibe.
On June 5th, 3 days after closing, Derek went to their new home to work on some, like, final touches to the home. He did some planning for renovations, as the house was going to be worked on soon by the builders. So that, because it was an older house, and they were going to, like, renovate bathrooms and give it some modern touches, you know. So once he got there, he found a card-sized envelope in their mailbox mixed in with, like, their bills and their junk mail.
I hate this case, but I love it.
There was no return address on the envelope, just big chunky letters saying, "To the new owners." He opened the envelope and found a typed letter that began very, like, tame and unconcerning, but very quickly became super creepy.
Yeah, just a tad bit. I don't know what I would do if I ever got a letter like this, honestly.
I don't know. Like, okay, so initially you're moving into, like, a nice neighborhood in your $1.3 million house, and you find no return address on a card. You know, you think maybe the neighbors dropped, like, a card off. You know, maybe they had work and didn't want to, you know, have my first day in my new house be unwelcoming. You know, maybe they just have a welcome card. This was not a welcome card. Well, it was and it wasn't. So here's the majority of that letter. There are some things left out initially that I did find later while researching notes, so I will put them into context in a bit, but I'm going to read you the letter that he received.
How long this was.
So it says, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard?"
This gives me chills. I don't like it, man. Oh,
It gets worse.
I know.
What? Sorry. It continues to say, "Why are you here? I will find out. I see that you have already flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk tisk, bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I've seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. More on the way. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested?
Oh my God.
Better for me. Was your old house too small for your growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive past 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I'm in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the fun begin. Signed, The Watcher." So...
Toss a coin to your watcher.
So they bought this house, and Derek is there to do, like, the finished touches. Like, I think this is, 3 days after closing on his house. He came in just to do, you know, checkups and stuff. And you see this in your mailbox? Absolutely not. No.
I honestly, I would just dip. Sorry, this is not a safe environment. I would like my money back, please.
It's not that easy with real estate, especially when it deals with $1 million, at least $1 million.
Oh, I know.
And it's insane and it's horrible. And that's why they had such a big problem. So immediately after reading the letter, Derek runs into the house and calls the police, now terrified for his family.
Understandable.
Yeah. He shuts all the windows and the doors, turning out all of the lights. An officer responded to the call, and after reading the letter Derek had received, he literally said, "What the fuck is this?" Which I found that super funny. He questioned.
I mean, it's a valid response. It is a valid response. Like, what?
So he questioned Derek a little to try to figure out who the sender was and whether Derek or his family had any enemies, but there was nobody that he could think of that would want to harm them in any way. They had no enemies or anything like that.
I feel like when you got that kind of money, there's always somebody that's after you.
Yeah, maybe a quote unquote underling at work, or
do you think that's probably what it was?
Somebody. Well, we're gonna get into the theories later, and I'm gonna tell you what I think, and then we'll talk about what you think. We'll talk.
I feel like I know what I think, but I still don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. So the officer actually suggested that maybe they obscure the house with some construction equipment at the home, so it would be harder to see inside. And
let's get curtains.
After this, Derek went home to his family. They decided to contact the previous owners of 657 Boulevard, and this was John and Andrea Woods, and he sent them an email that same night. The Woods were in their 60s at this point with grown children, adult children, so they had sold the house as it had become too large for them because it was just the two of them.
How much money do you think they made on selling that house?
$1.3 million. That's how much it sold for.
I know, but how much money did they put into the house?
I don't know. So they did ask the Woods if they might know who would have sent them this letter, and it was a super valid question because the letter had named the Woods, saying, and this is I was telling you, some of the excerpts that weren't directly in the letter I also found online, so I put them in here. It said, "I asked the Woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened." So obviously I would contact the previous owners, the Woods. Hey, what's up with this? What do you mean you guys brought them young blood? Who is that?
You got some explaining to do.
Basically. The next day, Andrea Woods responded to the email stating she had no idea who the watcher could be or why he would even mention them. She did recall, though, that a few days before moving out in May and selling them their home, that the home did receive a letter. The letter explained the watcher similarly in the way that the Broaddus's letter described them, as the grandfather being first, the father second, and now this new watcher as the new watcher. It did confuse the Woods, though, as in the 23 years that they lived in the home, they had never, ever before received a letter like this. So when they did receive this first letter in May, they wrote it off as a prank and threw that letter away.
Valid response.
Which
I probably would have done the same thing. Whatever.
Yeah. Kind of frustrating, though, because that's just more evidence that you could have used for what happens later, but I understand it.
I mean, there's no tangible evidence, but he still got them to make a testimony.
Right, exactly.
So, still works.
Yeah. So that same day, Derek and Maria went to the police station to see about opening an investigation on the letters that the home was receiving, and the police suggested that they not mention any of it to the neighbors or friends who could potentially be suspects. It was at this point that Derek and Andrea decided to stay away from the home as much as they could, just during renovations and while moving was taking place. And Derek actually even canceled a work trip to stay with his family because obviously somebody's kind of making threatening mentions towards your family. So they're like, well, let's just not move in quite yet and see if we can get this resolved.
I don't remember if this was ever specified. Was it a hand delivered letter that was put into the mailbox, or was it gone through the postal service?
They were mailed.
They were mailed?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember that part.
That
so I was it should have a return address.
It doesn't have to if it goes
Could you imagine? Could you imagine doing that and this letter just gets randomly delivered to the wrong house, or gets lost and you're waiting? Yeah, this is gonna be so funny for me, and then nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens. So it did come to the point that if the kids wandered too far into the backyard, Maria would call to them and like yell at them to come closer to the house. And obviously she would call them by name. So over the next few weeks, there were no new letters and construction went ahead as planned, which great. This is great, you know. The only thing that really happened was one event that a contractor found a sign that was thrown into the yard that he himself had hammered into the ground. So that was a little weird.
Like of all things to do.
Yeah, which I don't know if it was necessarily related to this case, but it is a weird thing that did happen. I feel like maybe it was vandalism or something, but who knows. So, of course, with all this happening, the family was on edge, and Derek and Maria obviously looked at everyone suspiciously. Like, they didn't know who this was, who was watching them. The contractors, the employees, the neighbors, everyone was looked at. There was some curiosity from the neighborhood about what sort of work the family was doing to the house, and at one point, Derek had actually given a tour to some of the neighbors who were inquiring, which in and of itself is not a creepy thing to do because,
it's not, but like after this whole letter
after
thing?
that, absolutely not. It'd be like, we'll show you guys later. Like once I figure out what's going on, then absolutely you guys can come and look at all of this money I'm spending to make my house look nice. I would want to show it off.
Look at how rich I am.
So it was weird because while he was giving them this tour, the wife of the couple that came in actually remarked to Derek that it would be, quote unquote, nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood.
I hate it.
And Derek was like, huh. Interesting you say that.
Oh my God.
So a few days after the arrival of the first letter...
There's no way that's a coincidence.
No, there's not. Like,
of all things.
Who says that? Who says young blood? I have never heard that just in passing conversation.
Me neither.
You know? So a few days after the arrival of that first letter, Derek and Maria attended a barbecue across the street because, again, this is like a really social neighborhood.
No thanks.
So this is across the street from their new house, and it was to welcome both their family and another family that had moved into the neighborhood roughly the same time. The whole while at the barbecue, they were on edge, of course, as their children were doing what kids do and running around. But knowing that one of these people could potentially be the watcher had them constantly yelling at the children to stay close by. Maria stated that they must have seemed crazy to everyone else, as at that point they, along with the police, were the only ones who had knowledge of the letter. So during that barbecue, Derek spoke with a neighbor, and this is like an interesting thing that happened. And this neighbor actually lived 2 homes down from Derek, and his name was John Schmidt. John told Derek of the Langfords, which is an important name, remember that name, and the Langfords were the neighbors that lived directly between the 2 houses, between John's home and Derek's home. Peggy Langford was in her 90s, and had several adult children, all in their 60s at this point. The neighborhood often noted that they were kind of strange, but they were pretty harmless, you know, just kind of a weird family, whatever. John brought up that one of the younger Langfords, Michael, who he described as having a beard like Ernest Hemingway and a kind of Boo Radley character. And
that's scary.
I actually had to look that up, because I didn't know who Boo Radley was, really? But it's from To Kill a Mockingbird, and I've never read that. I've never read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Somebody didn't do their English assignments.
We didn't do that in my English classes. I'm sorry.
I did.
I'm sorry.
I did To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Gatsby.
Like
which, to be fair, The Great Gatsby was really like, it was a cop out because it was towards the end of the year. My teacher's like, here's the Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, that's what my
Great Gatsby one.
Yeah, but I did that, Mice and Men.
Did the Mice and Men one.
And obviously like Romeo and Juliet. Like I did all those, but I never did To Kill a Mockingbird. So I didn't know who Boo Radley was, but I learned. So what I found as somebody who's never read it is that Boo Radley is a character who is described as kind of reclusive and only really comes out at night. So that's how he was describing Michael Langford. At this point, Derek believed that he had figured out who the watcher was. These circumstances were pretty perfect because, again, this is their next door neighbor who...
It was essentially Boo Radley.
And he was unemployed during this time, so he had all the time in the world to, you know, if he wanted to watch the neighbors, he could do that. So it was circumstantial, But again, he was kind of desperate at this point because he's stressed out, you know. Somebody's watching their home, and this is the only kind of quote-unquote lead he has. So the Langford family had lived in their home since the 1960s, which is when the letter states that the watcher's father had begun to watch 657 Boulevard. Richard Langford was the husband to Peggy Langford, who's the mom in her 90s.
Yeah.
And Richard was the father to the children in the home in 2014 currently, which circumstantially lined up with the timeline that described his role in the watching as the better part of 2 decades before his death gave the new watcher the responsibility.
Now,
so
either this is just one very elaborate prank of somebody in the neighborhood who knows about them. And
right.
is just talking like that to make it seem like it's coming from them.
Yeah.
Or it's actually them.
Right.
Or so it's circumstantial, I guess. But I feel like that's just...
It points,
that's just too on the nose.
It points very closely to the Langfords. It's very on the nose. So, Detective Lugo was the one leading the investigation on the case. He was actually already aware of the implications for the Langfords' involvement, and Lugo had actually already brought Michael Langford to the police headquarters for an interview just a week after the first letter arrived. Michael did deny knowing anything about the letters or, like, who sent them or whatever.
Why wouldn't he? Even if he did do it, why would he be like, yeah, that was me?
Yeah. I mean, you can't really... It's not a crime to harass some... Like, not harass, but send an ominous letter to somebody, you know? It's not a crime, but
it seemed kind of
rude thing to do.
It seemed kind of pedo-ish a little bit. I mean, he's talking about essentially abducting kids.
Calling the kids to him, yeah.
I mean, I guess from a legal standpoint, he's not outright saying he's going to do it. And he's not saying that he's going to, you know, take them or harm them or anything. So I guess they really couldn't do anything with that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's still weird. So after Michael denied knowing anything about the letters, Lugo did note that, quote, the narrative of what Michael said matched things mentioned in the letters. So again, police know about it and the family knows about it. But Michael just so happened to say things that matched the letter. So not impossible, but still. It seemed that the Broadduses had found their suspect, though there was no hard evidence, and after a few weeks, the police chief told the family that short of an admission, there was not anything the department could do. So.
Makes sense.
Yeah. 2 weeks after the first letter, another letter had arrived.
Oh, no.
It was addressed directly to the Broadduses this time instead of just to the new owners, though the addressment was spelled incorrectly as Braddus. This new letter said, "Welcome to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what's inside the walls yet? In time they will."
Ugh, I hate it.
The author of the letter then bragged about learning about all of their names and went on to list all 3 kids in order of birth, including their nicknames.
What do you mean when they're sitting there calling out their names in the front yard?
How do you know their birthday? Is my thing. Because, I mean, they went to the barbecue.
Well, you just said they listed them in order of birth, not gave their birthdays. And I assume with, like, the size difference, you could make a guess.
I mean, sure, but, like, and I don't know a lot about the kids. I don't know how far apart in age they are because, obviously, like, kids are protected from media by law. But,
you know, I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to kind of guesstimate.
But if they're only a couple, like, a year or two apart, you know, it could be harder. I don't know. Maybe it was easy, maybe it wasn't, but it's still creepy nonetheless.
Yeah, still 100% creepy. Not a letter I would like to receive.
Right. So the letter continues, "I am pleased to know your names now in the name of the young blood you have brought me."
I hate that.
"You certainly say their names often." And this is the point where the author mentioned one of the children specifically, as he had seen her on the porch painting on her easel, which is a big point in the case. He says, "This person, is she the artist of the family? 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood have ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of its secrets it holds yet?"
Stop.
"Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them." It is too far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream.
Oh my God.
Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house.
That's what I'm saying. Just get curtains, and then he literally has nothing. Like you could buy a $1.3 million house and renovate the thing. I'm sure you can just go to Walmart and buy some curtains,
at least some sheets or something. They say, who am I? I am the Watcher, and I have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, and my obsession. And now you are too, Braddis family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and it has now brought you to me. Have a nice moving in day. You know I will be watching.
So at that point, see, my brain immediately just went, oh, he specifically mentioned that he goes past the house multiple times a day. So at that point, I would literally just sit, look out the window towards the main street, and see if I recognize any people walking by multiple times who look, like the same person, or like the same car happens to be driving by.
Yeah, because it's in a neighborhood, so like how many people are really passing by? You can pass by to and from work, so it's twice a day, and he says multiple, often times a day. So you're like, all right, I've seen this guy 10 times. I'm a little suspicious.
Depending on, I guess, if the windows are tinted, you can also see if they're specifically looking inside the house, because they're going to drive by slow.
Real slow. Especially if they're looking to see who's going where.
I'm just saying. You had options.
So Derek told the press at this point, and this is after the case and everything.
Yeah.
And this is in the article I was reading. Derek told the press at this point, this is someone who threatened my kids, and the police are saying probably nothing's going to happen. Probably.
Which is not a good response.
Yeah. He says probably isn't good enough for me. It is not a good response.
Well, a lot of things don't happen until they do.
Until they do.
So.
And then it's too late. So that's why you got to take everything seriously.
Exactly.
Until the investigation was resolved, Derek and Maria stopped bringing their children to the house altogether. This seemed to upset the Watcher, and in July, another letter showed up. This letter said...
I remember this one. I hate this one so much.
This is pretty creepy. It says, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. The house is crying from all the pain it's going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what it used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room, imagining the life of the rich occupants here. The house was full of life and young blood.
The young blood comment.
But then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died, and now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. Gross. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It's coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell have you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it's my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass, and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood, and it needs you to come back. Let the young blood play again, like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone.
I hate it.
It's bad.
I hate it so much.
It's pretty bad. So Derek told police that if they didn't take care of the situation regarding the neighbor Michael Langford, they would have a different kind of case on their hands. So he was getting kind of testy at this point.
Well, to be
fair.
The cops are refusing to do anything.
Somebody is still watching. Somebody is still staking out the house at this point.
You got your kids there and everything. And
they're watching so often that they know that they haven't been around, or the kids haven't been around.
Right.
This was 2 weeks later. Somebody's watching often enough to know, So looking at what the Broadduses were dealing with, they were put in a really hard place with a decision to make. They had just spent $1.3 million on this home paid for renovations to be done on that home, and promised their kids a life here in which they were obviously very excited about. But it didn't seem safe anymore, and they weren't anywhere close to figuring out what was going on.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a
super
hard thing.
Complicated.
A lot of people,
situation.
I mean, including myself, would be like, no, we're selling the house. Absolutely. Like, this is not, like, I'll leave. But there's a lot of money invested into this already after purchasing it.
I mean, yeah, but, I mean, you just bought a house for $1.3 million. It ain't that bad.
So it's a lot of people. I'm
pretty sure you could probably, even with, like, after the renovations, I'm sure you could make more than that on the house.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So I feel like they would at least get, like, a significant portion of their money back.
Yeah. I mean, most places would understand, like, we'll pay us for the work that we've already done and try to sell the house for what we, like, we'll try to finish up what we can, make it look nice. And then if people want to buy it in the condition it's in, fine. You know, there's people out there for that. You can sell it. They were in the situation as well that their old home had already been sold, and the family had actually already moved into Maria's parents' home while they figured out what they were going to do.
Makes sense.
So now we're going to kind of move on to how they're dealing with it, or how they dealt with it.
Yeah.
What they were going to do about it. The family did begin their own investigation, and Derek had become particularly, like, obsessed over it. He set up cameras in the house, which, yes, good job. He spent entire nights in the home watching to see if anyone was observing the house, which, yes, good job. And a reporter from one of the sources on, so my source for a lot of this episode is from thecut.com. And the reporter on that explains how when he went to interview Derek had brought with him a plethora of his own research and investigative documents, like tons of it.
Why didn't he put cameras outside?
I'm sure he did. I would imagine he did. I mean, it doesn't seem like the watcher is coming into the house, you know, just kind of observing it from the street. So I would absolutely put a camera outside, and I'm sure he probably did, but...
An interesting test would to kind of, like, more so be always towards the back side of the house, away from the front, and see if he says anything. You know, like, towards, like, the backyard area?
Yeah.
And see if, you know, the guy says anything about that. Because if so, then, you know, it has to be someone, like, around the neighborhood.
Right. So that's why the easel situation is so important, because the easel was set up in the backyard on the porch. So it was like, you've got your house, the easel was here. You know what I mean? So if you're looking at it from the front, you're not going to see the backyard. You're not going to see the little girl painting on her easel. It would have to be at a specific angle on the side of the house that pretty much only the neighbor directly next door or directly behind them could see the little girl on the easel. So that's why that's so important.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Derek had copies of the letters, again, of which at this point were only shared with family, close friends, and police. And even to this day, only the family, close friends, and police have, like, the legitimate copies of these letters. Most of what I have are excerpts that were shared with this reporter specifically.
I wish I could see all this stuff.
Yeah, I would love to find pictures to post on our Instagram. I'm going to post what I can, but again, this is still an ongoing investigation. Spoilers, it's unsolved. But I'm going to post what I can.
We have a knack for finding those.
I know. I only like the really interesting ones.
They're the most interesting.
I only like the really interesting ones. But so Michael had also brought with him a map that displayed when each of the neighbors had moved into their homes, like what year, how long they've been there, their names, and this was just in their immediate area. And he also had overlays on the map showing possible sightlines for the easel incident, like I was saying. So he had mapped out and figured out all of the possible sightlines anybody could have seen.
It's kind of funny that he's doing more than the police department.
As far as we know. Again, it's still an open investigation.
Well,
from what I read,
time.
Yeah, from what I read, the police did, like, an exhaustive investigation on this.
I mean, I'm sure after everything. But right. I mean, like, as it was going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. And what's wild, too, is this map that he had with him had, like, a circle on it where he marked out the range from earshot. So, crazy. Like, he went and found the furthest away he could get to where he could still hear somebody in the backyard talking or yelling to children. You know what I mean? So he was thorough about this. While the investigation was ongoing and not really feeling satisfied with the police involvement, Derek and Maria hired a private investigator who staked out the neighborhood, and he ran background checks on the Langfords as well. Nothing noteworthy really came up on the family, and Derek had actually reached out then to a former FBI agent who was also on the high school board of trustees with Michael. So they kind of knew each other.
Imagine just casually knowing an FBI agent.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can you do this for me? Help me out.
So Michael also then hired Robert Lenahan, who was another FBI agent, to conduct a threat assessment. So
amazing.
He was going hard on this. While inspecting the letters, Robert Lenahan recognized certain old-fashioned ticks that the Watcher used in his in his writing that pointed to an older writer, maybe somebody in their 60s who lived right next door. Maybe not. I don't know. Allegedly.
I mean, time would actually kind of line up with that too, because he was talking about roaming the house in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. And this was in 2014,
so kind of matches.
Allegedly.
This is all allegedly.
This is allegedly. So some of the things he pointed out that would kind of point to an older writer was that the envelope was addressed, the second envelope was addressed to M/M Braddis, which I guess is an older way to address somebody. The salutations at the beginning of the letter included the day's weather, such as warm or humid, sunny or rainy, stuff like that, which I guess.
Which, fun fact, that's how the Enigma machine was broken. When they were trying to decode this letter, which changed every day, right? The way they figured it out is they know that every single kind of broadcast would begin with stating the day's weather. And at the very end, it would always say, Heil Hitler. So knowing all that, and then also, referencing commonly used words in these memos or telegrams or whatever, they were able to use this machine and enter in the input in order for it to break every single code every single day.
That's like the Zodiac Killer one, when the teacher was like, it probably starts with an I, and then she just figured it out.
Yeah. She just figured it out. It's probably says killing, so,
let's find a
two of the same symbols
word.
Is probably L. Yeah.
So people are smart.
It's just things like that.
Go them. And then another thing that the letters had were that the sentences had double spaces in between them, which again, I guess is another, I'm not as an expert on this, but pointed to an older writing style. Lenahan noted that the writer's language pointed to the Watcher being a quote-unquote voracious reader, and noted a lack of profanity, suggesting that he says, is a less macho writer.
So maybe it is a woman.
Maybe. Could be a woman, could be a man. They don't know.
Maybe it's a child.
He also found that the writer was, or may have been erratic with their writing, as there were many typos and errors.
So how can you be well-read and then have typos and errors?
Well, I mean, the language that's used in it. You know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a linguist. This dude's...
misspelling their name.
This dude's a professional.
Or maybe he was doing it just to throw him off, like how the Zodiac did it.
Maybe. I don't know. That could be
adding,
it. Maybe he was
fake,
smarter.
Handwriting quirks.
Yeah.
So that way it would kind of not come back to him.
Maybe they were smarter than they're letting on. So some of the examples of some of the errors in these letters were obviously how we mentioned they misspelled the Braddis's name as Braddis. The first letter was dated Tuesday, June 4th, though the 4th was actually on a Wednesday. So just simple mistakes. He did consider that the writer may also have seen the movie called The Watcher, starring Keanu Reeves. So The Watcher was actually a movie about a serial killer who stalks a detective. Again, I haven't seen this, but...
I haven't seen it either.
I think it came out in 2003 or something like that. 2002 or 03. The writer also seemed to have a certain dislike of the wealthy, particularly new money, which, there is a tiff between that, and I don't understand. So an example of this whole new money thing is in one of his letters, he wrote, quote, "Are you one of those Hoboken transplants that are ruining Westfield?" As well as citing the letter's mention of the house's pain from being changed. So instead of keeping the way that the house used to be, he was upset that they were renovating it. So
get over it.
Lenahan didn't believe that the Watcher would act on any of the threats that he had actually written. And Michael
I mean, yeah, but I mean, yeah, sure, he may not have or may not, but
there's still the possibility.
There's still a possibility, and I'm not trying to find out if he will.
Right. Yeah. That's like me with ghosts and a Ouija board.
No, that we're doing.
It's probably gonna be fine, but I ain't trying to find out.
I'll do it by myself then.
Okay.
And if I die, it's your fault.
I'm telling you not to do it.
I'm writing a letter saying if I die.
A certified letter?
If I die, I'm going to get it notarized. If I die, it is Bailey's fault.
Good luck.
Because she
the only notaries you know will not do it. So Michael had actually had a dream at this point that he had confronted Peggy Langford, the mom, next door, and demanded that she build an 8-foot fence between them. His wife, Maria, began having dreams about the Watcher as well, and she vividly remembers her dreams, including a man living nearby. Obviously, none of this means anything, but these are some dreams that they were having. She says in her dreams, he was wearing these boots, or this is a quote from her, he was wearing these boots and carrying a pitchfork and calling to the kids, and I couldn't get to them in time.
Why a pitchfork?
So, I don't know. I mean, it could be.
Do you think she was thinking about, like, that painting?
Yeah. So obviously this caused her like a ton of mental stress and anxiety. And even while she was out shopping, everyone she saw or met seemed like they could be the Watcher to her. And she began to doubt everyone around her.
That'd be the worst.
And it did actually get to the point where if she could find out their name, like out in public shopping, if she knew their name somehow, some way, she would actually Google them to see if there was any record of any stalking or anything like that on them, which is... I cannot imagine getting to that point of being stressed. You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
It is. And now that you know all of that information, we're going to move on to Big Brain Detective time next week. So you'll have to come back for part 2.
The cliffhanger.
The cliffhanger. Part 2 will have all of the information that I could find on the resolution, if there was one, you know, just all that good stuff. So come back next week and see what I found. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the beginning of that story, and hopefully you guys come back to hear the rest of it next week.
I hate this case, but I love it.
It's
I think, honestly, this is probably the only case that's ever actually given me the creeps.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because, I guess, it could happen to anybody, and you could never know who it was. Maybe they're stalking you for the rest of your life and just staying quiet. You don't know.
Maybe they've been following you for a while.
Maybe never know.
And just never made themselves known until you moved into this new house.
It's so creepy. I think what it comes down to is it messes with your sense of security.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is.
You don't know.
Especially when they start naming your kids and pointing out
little things about your house, like, please.
Oh, is she the artist of the family?
Yeah.
Like,
it's not good.
Yeah. No
so,
thanks.
And you guys, we are almost at 2,000 downloads at this point.
Oh, it's crazy. It stresses me out.
What was that?
I don't know. It was.
I mean, I feel that. No, don't get me wrong. I feel that because I'm stressed, but I'm also super appreciative, and I didn't know that this was going to happen. And I love you guys so much. All of the shares that you guys give us, all the comments, being able to talk to you guys, that helps us out so much because it lets me know that, we're doing this for you guys.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we are, but it feels good to get some of that back too. You know what I mean? It's like you guys, your comments literally give so much to us. Like, we love reading
Honestly,
them.
it makes us feel like we're doing a good job.
Yeah, and that comes with all the numbers and stuff too, like all the downloads, all the likes and stuff. Like, that makes all this so much more fun for us.
Oh, yeah.
So if you guys wanted to keep that ball rolling, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at What Sleep Podcast. And you can find us on Twitter at What Sleep Pod. And we also have a merch store still. We still got some stock left, and we've got t-shirts, masks, mugs, stickers, iPhone cases, Android cases. I'm sorry, Samsung cases. I don't know. We've got a bunch of stuff up there for you guys if you were interested in it. And that's at teespring.com/stores/whatsleep. And if you guys considered, if you would be so kind, subscribing to our Patreon, we have a $5 tier, which supports the podcast directly. On top of, you guys get 15% off of all the merchandise at our Teespring store. So, that's a win-win, you know? We would super appreciate it. And we do appreciate you guys so much.
Oh, yeah.
So, we will see you guys in next week's episode.
I was looking for the nut button.
We've lost the nut button.
Hold on. It's in here somewhere. Wait. Got it.
Know it.
All right. Got it.
Know it.
We'll see you guys in next week's episode. Bye.